What the hell is going on in the world? No, I should ask first, who are you and what have you spent the last several decades of your life studying and doing, and how does that relate to what's happening in the world right now?
We are going through a crisis, very intense right now, but it's a crisis that we have been through before. 20 years ago with the Iraq War, even before that, we saw the bombing of Gaddafi, we saw the reactions there. Now, I have been studying military strategy, air power, international terrorism, now terrorism inside the United States, and also political violence in the United States that's not related to particular groups. So I've been studying political violence for 40 years.
What is the headline that people need to be aware of when you've looked at 30 years of these types of wars?
That bombs don't just hit targets, they change politics.
What does that mean?
That means that before the bombs fall, and even as the bombs are falling now, we tend to focus on the tactical success of bombing. We tend to ask, did the bombs hit the targets? And it's, with the smart bomb age, it's almost mesmerizing. They hit the target and destroy the target. Crater dirt, crater concrete, destroy buildings 90% of the time. The problem is, wars are not just about the hardware. They're not just about the military operation of putting a bomb on a target. They're about politics. And when the bombs start to fall, the politics in both the target, the enemy, change, and the politics in the attacker, the initiator, change. And that threshold is the beginning of what I'm calling the escalation trap, because you get at stage one, tactical success often. What's missing here is the next consideration, which is politics.
Who have you advised, and at what level have you advised them on strategy, war, et cetera, et cetera?
So when I finished my PhD, right away, we started to fight the first Gulf War, which was an all-air power war. And I found my work from the 1980s suddenly more relevant than ever. I was in the Washington Post, USA Today, Frontline, designing the stories because we didn't have the talking military heads at the time. And then I get a call from the US Air Force. And they're asking me to come in and help not just teach, but to build the curriculum. Then what happens as time goes on, I end up advising every White House from 2001 to 2024, including the first Trump White House.
I also heard that you've been running simulations on a war with Iran.
Yep, the last class of every strategy for 20 years. In fact, we did it just last May, just before we started the bombing, and 90 minutes. So the class goes a whole quarter, strategy in all kinds of different ways. And we ended with the bombing of Iran. And what did that mean? That meant we took out the whole target. We have the target set laid out. We have the attack plans. We really go through the bombing of Natanz, Fordo, Esfahani. There's a number of these facilities and so forth. And then we look at what's going to happen. And what you see right away is 90+%. Those B-2s are going to destroy those targets.
Okay? B-2s being the aircraft.
The stealthy aircraft that can penetrate the airspace, small risk of loss. And then you see, but we don't know where the nuclear material is. The whole point of this is not to destroy a building. It's to get at the 5%, 20%, 60% enriched uranium that's the material for bombs. And last May, it was very clear they had the material for 16 bombs. Now, not
16 nuclear bombs.
16.
Nuclear bombs.
Yes, nuclear bombs, not to produce them all in a single week, but over a period of months. And then after we did that simulation, we didn't know where a single ounce was. And we weren't going to know for months after. So at the end of I make some predictions. I say, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is after about a year, we are going to panic because that material could be dispersed anywhere in Iran, anywhere in that country. And that country, look how big that is compared to the United States, could be dispersed anywhere now. And how many of those are actually developing toward a bomb? We will not know. So what will we do? Regime change.
From all of your years 31 years old, you start teaching about air power and war in this regard, and you are 65 now.
Yeah.
What is from everything you know, 30 plus years studying this stuff, Iran, running simulations on Iran, advising the White House, being a master and probably, arguably, the most informed person in the United States right now about air attacks like the one the US is performing on Iran. What is the headline that you're trying to send to the world at this moment in time? Like, what is it we're missing? Because we're seeing Trump come out and Trump say, it's going well, everything's amazing, we've taken out all their guys. What are we missing?
We're missing that we're stuck in a trap of our own making. I'll explain what that trap is, but the key consequence of the trap is we're losing control. We are losing control of the situation. And what you were seeing with President Trump is he's trying to regain control. Now, the problem is that starting not just a week ago Saturday, but starting back in June when we took out Natanz Fordo, we started to lose control. And what are we losing control of? Knowing where that nuclear material is. And we now have civilian satellites, and you can see them moving things. What would they be moving around the nuclear areas? I wonder. You think they're moving what are they moving here? It's most likely going to be that nuclear material because their plan, you can see they have prepared for this war just as we have, except they've been preparing for how to be resilient, how to now lash back in increasingly aggressive ways. They are winning the escalation part of the war, and that's not an accident. This you can see coming in stages.
But for anyone that doesn't know, we've got leaders that have different levels of sort of information and knowledge here. I'm going to try and summarize this and butcher it in the most indelicate way I possibly can. So earlier last year, the United States suspected that Iran were very close to enriching uranium. They're at 60%.
They're at 60 already.
If they get to 90%, they have a bomb.
Yes, but possibly even with the 60%, Stephen, it depends on just how good their scientists are, and we're not really sure. So there's somewhere, we're at 60%, we're already very worried. You go to 90, it's a gimme.
And then the United States dropped these big bunker buster bombs. They flew those B-2 airplanes in, dropped these bombs, smashing up the site.
Yep.
And then it felt like it was over. And then the United States went into negotiations with Iran to try and get some kind of deal done.
To get the material we didn't get.
Oh, okay.
You see, why are we even talking to them? If this has really obliterated the program, why are we bothering to talk to them? What exactly are we talking about here? Do you notice the inconsistency here? So when you say we thought it was over, that's the public. Okay. Now, the public need to understand they're very busy people. They're paying for the price of eggs. Okay. So they're not supposed to be able to be up on this.
It's a good point I've never thought about.
Yeah.
Why would we be talking to them?
Why are we talking to them, you see? So right from the get-go. And by the way, all of it's the Israelis. We have a thing called the Defense Intelligence Agency. Their reports that were done after the bombing were leaked, and they all say the same thing, which is we created holes. We probably shook these underground chambers. We're not sure because we had no eyeballs on that. But we have no idea where that enriched uranium is. And we have good reason to worry they got them out because we actually have a satellite picture that shows 2 days before we bombed Fordo, there's a bunch of trucks moving stuff out. Gee, what do you think you might move out if America's about to bomb your site? Again, I don't think they're moving out the popcorn. So, and it's this material can be moved in what look like large scuba tanks. They call them scuba tanks, but I try to show pictures of this too. They're actually like as large as this table. So you need basically trucks like that satellite photography shows that they took out. So we can't say for sure, but what you see is these are the indications that you worry they've dispersed the material even before we hit the site.
And then we attack.
Yep.
The United States attacks in February 2026, which is...
February 2026, February 2028, we start again, this time with regime change. Notice we don't go even after the nuclear material. We don't know where it is.
So for the average person would think if you take out the supreme leader, then the war is over. Drop the bomb on the person and the war is complete.
Yeah, so let's talk about your Jenga thing here, because what I find, Stephen, so keep in mind, I am advising, teaching some of the most brilliant minds in the country. Now, a lot of these smart people, though, they don't know that they've been given like 1-inch deep briefings, maybe even 1-sentence briefings. So their image is often like this, and it's wrong. This is what they think the regime looks like. And they think that because they've been given, they basically have been consuming, probably for years, 1 or 2 sentences about the structure. They know there's a supreme leader. They might know there's nuclear facilities, missiles command. And so it looks like, oh my goodness gracious, that if you could just simply take out the right node, you would be able to make this whole thing fall down, okay? But that's the wrong image, Stephen. This is the way smart people think. The problem is, this is a false image of most regimes, even the bad ones, and certainly the Iranian regime. Let me just focus on the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime is more like a matrix. It's not brittle the way this is. So you can keep trying to pull things out, but with a matrix, or I think the corporate structures now are built to be adaptive to change, because you have so many changes that happen. The structure needs to adapt to change. That is basically the structure of revolutionary regimes going back to before World War I.
Okay, I want to ask a dumb question.
Yep.
When they took out the supreme leader in Iran, who's going to give out the instructions?
The adaptive system adapts and fills in the holes. It fills in the holes usually with what's left. And in this case, the supreme leader that we took out, this particular hole, this was the guy who had 2 fatwas, they're called. These are religious edicts. It's like a papal edict against nuclear weapons. It's a religious, he's the leader of essentially the religion, a little bit like the Shia Pope. And he is actually issuing religious doctrine, and that's called a fatwa. And as a religious doctrine, he issued 2 that said Iran should not have nuclear weapons. The guy we killed was one of the guardrails against nuclear weapons.
How does that, he was developing them in his country?
No, he's developing the enrichment material. They hadn't been fashioned yet that we know of as nuclear weapons. Okay, so we're worried about, again, this enrichment going from 5% to 20% to 60%. But they hadn't actually taken that next step, which is more of an engineering step to develop the nuclear weapon. Now we took out the person who at the very tippy top was balancing the hawks and doves, and he had decided for decades to issue these fatwas. He did it not just once, but twice. His son, who took over, the new supreme leader, no fatwa yet. That fatwa died with this guy. So will the new leader come in? It's not clear. He's got the religious authority to do anything like what his father did. This is a very different world, and he's known to be way more aggressive than his father. He's been in charge of the Bazi, basically the police that like to go and kill the protesters. He's been the guy who's been very, very strongly supporting, if not leading, that particular effort.
And last night it was announced that he has been appointed as the new leader.
He's the new supreme leader. Okay?
Did Trump expect this?
I think that he expected it because he kept trying to talk the Iranians out of it. This is what he meant by last week when President Trump was saying that he wanted not this guy. He specifically said not the son. And then he had a problem because people kept pushing him. And they said, okay, well, if you don't like the son, who would you pick? And he said, well, it is a problem because when we killed the supreme leader, we killed around the leader 20 or 30 others who we actually thought were better. So we actually took out the best alternatives when we killed when the supreme leader was killed. And so everybody's scratching their heads, going, "What are we talking about here?" So we actually helped by killing the competitors to the sun. We made it more likely the sun. And so what I'm trying to explain, Stephen, is this adapts, okay? So that you're not really taking these pieces out. You're rearranging them, and you are moving up. In this case, you're moving up.
The next supreme leader?
Well, there's the supreme leader, but what we're not showing here, you're seeing the target sets that are being discussed. You're not seeing the Revolutionary Guard.
What is that?
That is part of the army. Iran has 1 million men in arms. 1 million. That's as many as we have in our 300 million people. They have 92 million. They have 1 million in arms. And about 150 or 200,000 of them are what are called the Revolutionary Guards. These are the most aggressive, the most well-trained. These are the most dedicated to the regime. The son, who we just took over, is the prime candidate for that group. So when we took out a link here, it's not just being replaced by another cog. It's being replaced by a very aggressive individual who's backed by some of the most aggressive part of that 1 million-man army. So this is what I was trying to explain in my Substacks, where when you take out the leader, you may kill the leader, but you get in its place a harder regime, a more resilient regime, a tougher regime that wants to lash back even more aggressively.
Because you killed Dad.
You killed Dad, and also, if you don't lash back, how does the new leader get his credibility with everybody else? If he's a wimp, why doesn't he get a bullet in the back of the head? You see, just because he's appointed a new leader, he's still, just like when you're the head of a new company, like let's say you take over, there's a company that's in shambles and they get rid of their CEO and they bring you on, okay? Well, you got to have a plan. You see, and if you don't have a plan to turn that thing around pretty soon, Elon Musk had to have the big plan. If you don't have that plan, guess what? You're out. Same here. So you have incentive structure here for not just replacing, not just wimpy replacements, certainly not pro-American replacements. You have incentives for lashing back against the attacker, which is why when we tried to kill Gaddafi in 1986, he lashes back and takes out Pan Am Flight 103, killing 271 civilians, 190 Americans. When we tried to take out the Milosevic regime to degrade it in March 99, Milosevic lashes back, sending 30,000 ground forces in to cleanse, that is, get rid of 1 million civilians in Kosovo. This over and over.
I mean, you have written books about suicide terrorism.
That's right.
I've got one of them in front of me here called Dying to Win. So, I mean, you know a lot about this subject. And this is one of the concerns that actually my fiance had said to me. She said, I explained to her, I was like, Iran, they really just have drones at the moment. So I think that's fine. And then she posed a question to me. She was like, yeah, but what about suicide terrorism?
Let me just explain. So here we are. Here is, of course, Iran. And imagine it's back in June. So I'm going to start the story in June. This is the beginning of the smart bomb, the escalation trap. Stage 1. We hit Fordo, which is right around there, and then we hit Natanz and some other sites right around here. And what does Iran do here? They lash back, and who are they lashing back against? Israel here. They have their missiles focused on Israel. They're not really hitting our bases here. They're hitting Israel, and they send 3,000 Israelis to the hospital, the most since the 73 war, so a long time. That is stage 1, okay? Now what happened in February 28? February 28, they're lashing back a bit against Israel for sure, but now they're at stage 2. This is why I published this piece today in Foreign Affairs about how Iran's winning the escalation war. So it just came out just a few hours before we came on. And what's happening here is I call it horizontal escalation, because what they're doing now is they're using drones, mostly a few missiles, but mostly drones. This was almost all missiles, no drones. And they're using their drone capacity, which they have a lot of, And it's precision. These drones are like precision-guided weapons. They go right to the target. And what they're trying to do is break this coalition.
For anyone that can't see at the moment, they countered with horizontal escalation against Saudi Arabia, the UAE.
The coalition that had been formed against them, they're trying to break the coalition, you see. And they may well do that.
Why would they want to break that? Why?
Because
my friends are escaping Dubai at the moment. I've got a friend staying in my house in Cape Town because he doesn't want to be in Dubai.
Because they want these countries to kick the Americans out of their country.
Okay.
Get rid of the embassies, get rid of the bases. If you can, then we don't have the platforms to plaster them. You see, these are our basically ground-based aircraft carriers.
I thought they were attacking Saudi Arabia, for example, because that will make Saudi Arabia call Trump and say, listen, stop, please, we're losing our tourism, we're shutting our airports.
Well, they are threatening the tourism, hitting the economic nodes, they're hitting hotels, they're hitting the airports. What they are trying to do is by threatening tourism, which varies from 5% to 10% of the GDP of these countries. This is not trivial amounts here. They're basically trying to drive wedges between these countries and America. And America right now, I don't see any movement through Congress. Where is this $100 billion going to the region to make up for their lost tourism? I don't remember seeing that bill come through Congress last week. So I'm just putting it a little humorously to point out, these countries are losing a fair bit right now, and that tourism may not come back for a while.
I've got friends that have moved.
Yeah.
I've got friends one of my friends was thinking about leaving, is now in my house in Cape Town, and he's been there for 5 years. He's leaving, and he's going to move to America. I've got so many friends that have called me.
And imagine that we have 500,000 American citizens here, and we have the State Department on CNN, call this number, we'll help you escape.
It's good. Even the media in the UK, you see it, they're showing the BBC is showing evacuations of UK citizens as they're being greeted in the airport, putting microphones in their face.
So this is putting a lot of pressure here, and there's something else that's not widely known, which is there's a big gap between what the leaders of the countries want, willing to support the U.S. and Israel, and their publics. You see, this coalition that's been built against Iran here is not clearly going down well with publics. These are publics. They may not like Iran. They may be Sunni and Iran Shia, but they don't want to be part of an Israeli expansion plan where Israel is going to conquer more and more territory and so forth. And so this is where the soft underbelly here of this isn't just about the tourism. That's the short term. The longer term is bottom-up pressure. Sadat, he was a leader of Egypt in the 1970s. He cut a deal with Israel. It's called the Camp David Accords, peace for land. But it was very favorable. Well, after Sadat did that, the president of Egypt, in 1981, in a military parade, his own security guards at the military parade marched with their guns, came up to his place, and they shot him dead. So this is the real world here. So this is very, very dangerous for these leaders. Now, that's stage two. Now, what happens if we decide to have one of these limited ground deployments here? Because after all, we still don't know where this material is.
What does that mean? So for anyone that doesn't know anything about the war, what does a ground deployment mean? Because I saw Trump being asked about this on the plane yesterday, and he didn't seem to deny it was going to happen.
It means you try to control a limited amount of space, say the space around Fordo or the nuclear facility that you bombed in June, and you would send the, say, 82nd Airborne in to control the space.
What's this? I don't know what any of this stuff means.
Oh, I see. So 82nd Airborne is a division that we have that's especially equipped to go into hostile area and land and control, say, airports, control space. Think about controlling all the size of LAX. Mm-hmm. So if you want to control LAX, you bring in the 82nd Airborne. They will have 5,000 men and women, not just guys now, and they will come in and they will control that space LAX. But they will also be doing this probably not for a day, not for even a week. They're going to have to spend weeks and weeks to search for that material because we don't know where it is, and it's all deeply buried, and a lot of the stuff has been, the entrances have been blown up. So this means long-term presence there. You might also take some of the oil fields to cut off some of the money here for the regime. That is where that book comes in.
Do you think that's likely that America will put boots on the ground, American soldiers in Iran?
I think it's at least 50-50, if not immediately. So people keep expecting the escalation to be continuous. And then when there's a pause, as there was between June and February, they think, oh, it's over. I'm going to go now worry about something else. And then believe me, there's plenty else to worry about. So we got Minneapolis. So we got plenty to worry about here, even with violence. But that's not how escalation operates. Escalation can have a ratchet effect that's spaced out by months of what seems like peace, only to come right back, and you're stuck in that escalation momentum.
Which is what we've seen.
Which is exactly what we've seen. And for the reason I'm telling you, we don't know where that nuclear material is. That has been the $64,000 weakness in this entire idea of using air power, not just in the last 10 days, going back to June. It's not just even about the regime change. It's about how are you going to get that nuclear material out? We had a deal, this deal with Obama. Trump did not like it, but with that deal, that held, and Iran took out almost all, virtually just only a tiny bit was left, not enough for a bomb, all out of the country. And we watched it. We monitored it. We had 24/7 cameras to monitor this. We had human on-site inspections to monitor this. 2018, Trump just ripped it up, walked away unilaterally, and from that point on, it's been pedal to the metal by Iran in upgrading that enriched uranium, and that's how you got to that material that would be enough for the 16 bombs, and right now, we don't know where that is.
So, yeah. Stage one is...
Okay, stage one, you are beginning the escalation trap. In this case, it's a smart bomb trap, but because it's with smart bombs, where you have tactical success, near perfect. Call it 100%, because it really is. But that doesn't mean you have strategic success. Tactical success plus strategic failure. Then that strategic failure weighs on you over time because the enemy still got the thing that you wanted to get in the first place. Now you do stage two, which is regime change. Because after all, you've already hit the targets. You can make the rubble bounce, but what more? That's why we didn't bomb them in the last 10 days. We might go back and bomb Fordo some more, okay? But we already bombed it. So